All right, let's go ahead and get started. Page number 18, session 3. So, like I said, we're gonna split this into two parts that are going to actually spread across page 18 and 19, and actually even farther than that. So, we're going to be working through that after we wrap up lunch. So. I want to get us into a little bit more of a practical side of this conversation, because again, some of you in the room are your checklist people, and you're like, okay, just give me something to do. Well, I'm at least going to give you a little bit of a journey map along the way. To your question a little bit earlier, I don't think that we do our guests any favors, or even our congregation members any favors, if we don't give them a clear destination in mind. I said earlier that first impressions is not just for first-timers. And what I know is that when we get serious about the way that we think about our guests, the way that our guest culture works in our churches, there's always going to be a benefit to people who have been around for a long, long time, right? When we get really clear about how we talk about certain things from the pulpit, when a pastor stops to explain a theological term for the benefit of a first-time guest, you know who else that benefits? Everybody else in the room who doesn't know that theological term. Like, we've heard it all of our life, but we've never really known the definition behind it. When we stop to explain, this is what Lord's Supper is, and this is how what we call fence the table to say that this is only for people who are followers of Jesus. You know who that benefits? First-time guests, but also those of us who have been around forever, and we need to stop and reflect on what the Lord's Supper is, or when we explain baptism, or when we talk about, we don't say things like, well, everybody knows the story of David and Goliath. Oh, really? Everybody knows it. Great. There are some people that didn't grow up in church, never read a Bible. They have no idea. They've heard it. Culturally, they kind of know, face your giant or whatever it is. They don't really know the story. So take 90 seconds and just cover that. You know who it benefits? First-time guests and people who have been here for 50 years. It benefits us all. So we want to map out the journey, and as we're doing this, what I hope that you'll see is not only is this beneficial for people who are walking in for the first time, but it's going to be beneficial for those of us who have been around for 10 years, 15 years, 50 years, who we've just kind of gotten used to doing church the way that we do church, but we've never really stopped to think about how we do it and why we do it and what we do in the process of doing it. So what you're going to see on pages 18 and 19, this is just a map of a single part of the process, not the entire process. So this is a Sunday morning, a first-time guest's first time at your church, okay? So what leads up to that, and what are the parts of it that they go into? This has nothing to do with what happens after they visit for the first time. This is just focused on their first visit. So we're going to be focusing primarily on pages 18 and 19. But again, on pages 20 through 25, there are some more details that I'm going to ask you to kind of flip back and forth as we're going down through there. Now, again, context matters. Not all of these steps are going to be steps that you necessarily need to implement tomorrow, but you need to have this map in your mind so that in the future you might be able to implement some of these things. And as we're walking through these, I want you to think about a couple of things. Number one, I want you to think about your church's particular combustion points. All right, let me define combustion points. This is a phrase that, again, was utilized by Disney, and it is something that they talk about where a guest in the park is going to get frustrated, okay? So I'm in a 3-hour-long line to get on a ride. I'm, having to pay $47 for the churro or whatever it is. It's a combustion point where somebody is going to get frustrated and kind of give up in the process. A few years ago, it's been several years ago now, the last trip I took to Disney, it was my wife, my then 10, 11-year-old daughter, and myself, so it was just three of us. We had stuck around to see the fireworks at the end of the night. So by this point, it's 10 o'clock, 10:30. I'm a good hour and a half past my bedtime. I'm exhausted, and we're sitting close to the castle watching the fireworks. And when the fireworks are over with, I turn around, and do you know what I see when I turn around? At least 1 million people, a massive humanity that I'm like, I'm not going home. I live here now. This is my house. I just gotta lay down right here, and just my kids can come visit me when they want to, but I'm not fighting that, right? And so just about the time, so we're like doing the penguin shuffle down through the line, and just about the time I've given up all hope because the crowd stops and the crowd starts, and we go 5 feet and the crowd stops again. All of a sudden, just to my left, the floodgates literally open, and there is just thousands of us that start funneling around this way. What I did not realize was that all of these years that I've been going to Disney, they had built in for that combustion point. And they knew that there was going to be a time that there was going to be a family from North Carolina that was going to turn around and see millions of people, and they couldn't get through them. And they were going to get frustrated and be like, I live here now. And they had built in a hidden gate, which was about 40 feet wide, that led to a passageway around the back of Main Street USA that you could funnel thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people out of this thing and bypass the crowd and dump you out into the parking lot. There was a combustion point that Disney had thought through on my behalf so that I didn't have to think through it, right? Now, why do I bring that up? In your churches, there are going to be combustion points where some of your guests are going to look at the process and they're going to be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to move forward. I'm trying to take a step, but I can't take a step. And you've got to figure out what are those fixes for the combustion point. What are the floodgates that you can build into the process to help them take the next step? Okay, that's what we're about to do on pages 18 and 19. So let's look at these boxes. You've got 5 boxes on one page, 5 boxes on another page to represent the overall guest experience on a first Sunday at your church. Let's start on the far left with website and social media. Website and social media. Now, this is admittedly before that they show up at your church. And maybe not all of your churches have a full-blown website. Maybe you have a Facebook page, Facebook account, something like that. You have something that is an online presence. Here's what I know. The vast majority of people who attend your church will attend your church before they ever attend your church. And the way that they will do that is by going onto your website, going onto your Facebook page, checking out what you have or whatever. And most of us in the room, or a lot of us in the room, we do that as well, right? Whenever I'm going to go to a new restaurant a few weeks ago, a friend of mine in our small group had a birthday, and he was like, hey, for my birthday, I want all the guys in the group, we're going to go out to dinner, and he chose a local barbecue joint in Durham. And I've been to this barbecue joint many times. It's just down the road from my house. But what do? That day, I get on the website, and I'm like, what am I going to order? Because if I'm anything, I'm jealous of other people's food orders, and I don't want you to order something that is better than what I ordered, right? Because I am petty just like that. And so I'm going to get online before I go to a restaurant, and I'm going to map out the menu. I'm going to be like, okay, I want that thing, and that's going to be my side, and if there's room, I might get that for dessert or whatever. And so so as soon as he says, this is where we're going, I'm like, here's the website, I'm going to go through there, and we'll figure it out. And when I finally selected my all of my meal, and I knew exactly what I was going to order, and it was going to be better than anything that Andy was going to order, or Evan was going to order, or Todd was going to order, because they out-ordered me the last time, and I'm going to do better than them this time. Right about that time, I happened to see their hours, and I realized they were actually closed that night, and we couldn't go anyway. So it didn't even matter, but that's a true story. People are going to check out your church before they check out your church. And so you want to make sure that if you have a website, Facebook page, whatever it is, that it is accurate. I cannot tell you the number of church websites that I've been on over the years that will say First Baptist Church, Main Street, and there is no city or state. Listen, I am confident that you're the only First Baptist Church on Main Street in America. There is none other. But just for the sake of argument, maybe put the city and state on there. Put your service time on there. Put, if you have Sunday school, on there. Put what do people do with their children when they show up. If there is a dress code, even if it is, we dress casually, and there is no dress code, put that on there. Put, what upcoming events or whatever. If you have the ability to put a clip of a worship service on there, do that so people kind of get a feel of what it's going to be. You want to be able to help people think about those things before they're showing up, so they just kind of have an idea of who you are. So that's the website and social media. The big idea is keep it up to date. I don't want to go on one of your Facebook pages and see what your women's ministry did in March of 2017. Right? That does me no good whatsoever. That does none of the the women in your community any good whatsoever to know what happened 8 years ago. Keep it up. Two, what is the approach? What does the physical approach to the church look like? We talked already about signage. You know my feelings about marquees. But I also think that if you are a church that has been in your community for any amount of time whatsoever, you are probably invisible to most of the people who pass by your church on Monday through Friday. If you were to poll the average person in your community and say, hey, on your commute, how many churches are there? And they'd be like, I don't know, 3, 4. There's no, okay, there's one on the corner. Okay, what are the names of those churches? Oh, dude, I got no clue. I think that one's Methodist, I'm pretty sure. Maybe Jehovah's Witness. Those count. I'm not sure. I don't know what. You're just completely invisible more often than not to people in your community. So even if you have a big sign on the road, I would encourage you to put some banners, to put some A-frames, to put some portable signage that's out on the weekend, so that people will drive by and kind of notice, oh, there's something going on there that I don't notice on my normal weekday commute. On that approach, you want to, if it's possible for you, to give your guests a way to self-identify. And what I mean by that is you want them to be able to let you know that you're a first-time guest. Now, this only works if you actually have people out there that are parking cars, and if there's somebody out there all the time. If not, this is not going to do you much good. At our church, we have signs that are leading up. As you're coming down the road, you start to see signs at the very outer reaches that says, first-time guest, ? Turn on your hazard lights for preferred parking. Now, I've asked this question of many people over the years that are a part of our church, and I'll say, how many of you in the room remember seeing that sign the very first time that you ever came to our church? And always, 100% of the hands in the room will go up. I'll say, leave your hands up. How many of you actually turned on your hazard lights? And 50% of the hands go down. Because 50% of the room were rule followers and turned on their hazard lights. 50% thought we're a cult, and I'm not doing that. That's so weird, right? So we know it's about 50% is our average that's going to do that. But what it does is it allowed our first-time guests to let us know that they were there, hit their hazard lights. We can guide them to first-time guest parking that's right up close to the building, and we can walk them where they're going to go. As you're talking about the approach to the building, it goes back to the cleanliness of your building. Some of our churches need a good Saturday morning work day, right? To get out, weed the flower beds, and to put down some new mulch, and maybe put a coat of paint on the building or something like that. Because people walk up, and if it looks out of date and dead and dirty and whatever, that's kind of whether it's true or not, people feel like it's an indicator of what's going to go on inside. They don't take care of their building. How can I possibly expect them to take care of my soul? You say, well, that's not fair. I get it, that's not fair, but again, we're talking about consumers here, so that may be a very true thing that we've got to think about. Then we want to think about parking. Now, this is where you might need to be flipping back and forth to page 20 because that's where I give you a little bit more room to take notes there. Again, not all of your churches may need a parking ministry. If you have a parking lot that would accommodate 150 cars and you have on average 30 cars that are showing up, well, you don't need to have a parking team of 20 guys that are out there lane by lane getting exactly into every single spot. Like, that's not a big deal. What you might want are some people out there just to wave and greet so that people know that I'm in the right space and there's service on and there's people out here. Here's what I know about volunteers at a church. I'm going to say something very controversial. Some of you are not going to like me for this more than you already don't like me for other things that I've said this morning. I believe that outside greeters are more important than inside greeters. Here's the reason why. You say, well, I've been an usher for 47 years. I get that. Here's the reason outside greeters always are going to be more important than inside greeters in my opinion. And that is, outside greeters give indication to what is coming inside. Right? And so if you're pulling up to a church and there's somebody out there in an orange vest with a baton and they're, getting you in your spot, that sends a subliminal message to your guest's brain to say, oh, I am going to be well taken care of here because they got somebody out here for me. And if there's somebody out here for me, there's probably somebody in there for me. And it just sets off a chain of events where they know they've got me as a series of handoffs all the way from the street to the seat, from the parking lot to the pew, right? They've thought through this before I do. So it's not that indoor greeters are not important. It's that the ones on the outside signal what is to come on the inside. Now, if you're looking at page 20, there's a few things that I would encourage you to think about as you're thinking about parking. When we're talking about the things that you need to know, we need to know a few things. Number one, culture does not expect you to have a parking team, right? When is the last time that you went to Walmart or you went to the grocery store or you went wherever and there was a parking greeters out there? It's never happened, right? To get that, you've got to go to the amusement parks of the world or whatever to have a parking. It's not something the culture expects. It's a really nice to have. But if we believe that the sermon starts in the parking lot, if we're trying to create this experience from the first moment that somebody is showing up, if we're trying to help them trust we knew you were coming, we've got a plan for you, then we need to be able to do that. Last night, we had a Friday night prayer gathering at our church. And so I was in charge of the parking team last night, which honestly is one of my very favorite things to do. It's not a job that I get to do often, but when I get to do it, I love it because as a pastor, parking cars is something that you can do. And after 30 minutes, you're like, I did that. And that's going to stay did for the next hour and a half. It's not going to get undid. It's done. And I did it. I know we shouldn't be proud of ourselves, but I did that. And I felt really good about it, right? And so it was me and my two other friends that were out there on the parking team. And what we realized was the closer to time that it got, 7 o'clock prayer meeting, and the more people who were showing up for our 7:15 prayer meeting, which we did not have, there was a joke in a second. The closer we got and the farther past the time of start that we got, the more important we were to them. Because we knew where all the empty spaces were and they did not. And we had left some of the closer spaces up to the building so that those coming in late got to walk right in, right? So it's not something that anybody expects, but it's a really nice to have, and it made those people arriving later feel better. There's Bible verse. It's biblical. So those are some things that we just need to know when we're thinking about parking. How do you do parking? We train our volunteers this. You're a greeter first. You're not a parking logistician first. You're a greeter first. You're out there to greet people, to welcome them, to smile at them. You're thinking through the logistics. You're acting as a buffer for people who are coming in from the outside and are trying to make their way inside. In our day and age, you're working as almost an extra pair of eyes and ears for security. You're keeping an eye on what's going on outside of the building and watching for people who might not have your best interest in mind as they're coming in. And then as we were planning for it, we're thinking through different things. Where are different groups of people going to park? Where do those who have special needs, where do they need to park? What do we have enough handicap spaces? And if not, do we need to add some more of those for people to be able to park closer to the building? Where do first-time guests go? Where do families with young kids go? All of those things. We have our building's kind of laid out a little. We've got one area that is the entrance is closer to our family ministry spaces. And so for that reason, we try to funnel all families with young kids around to the back of the building and park there. And they just kind of, as they come more and more times, they just kind of know that's where they park. And because it ends up being a little bit of a hike, we just invested in a few of those plastic wagons. And we'll just have a team of volunteers that will go out there and load kids in wagons, and they'll drag them. The parents love it because they're like, I don't have to deal with that walking across the parking lot. The kids have a blast with it, and the volunteers feel like heroes because the kids are like, there's Mr. Scott. He's going to take me into the, whatever. And so it's just a thing that we can do for them. All right, too much time on parking, only because I love parking. Outer entry. Let's talk about that. This is your sidewalk. This is your front doors. This is anything that's not parking, but before you get inside the building. I will tell you, there is a great and simple way that you can improve your outer entry team over the span of 18 inches. Do you know what 18 inches is? 18 inches is the distance between standing inside a door and standing outside of the door. Because if you ever walked up to a church, that I grew up in a church that had the big wooden doors, that you walked into, and so you never knew what was on the other side. And then, like in '87, we went through this big building project, and our thermometer went all the way up, so we got to invest in the glass doors. You know what I say when the thermometer went all the way up? We're Southern Baptists in the room, right? Thermometer? Okay, good. I was just making sure you're one of me. And so we got to have glass doors instead of wooden doors. And so now you could see before you got into the building what was on the other side of the door. But what I've learned is this, that guests don't often like it when they're walking up to a space and the door flips open in their face and you say, hey, good morning, welcome to the church, whatever. They like it better when you're 18 inches ahead and you see them coming and they see you before they get there and you just open the door for them and usher them on in. So best way to a better guest services team, outer entry team, is you can do that over the course of 18 inches. Now, here's what's important. If you got a lot of people that are outside and you got guests walking from their car and you've got 7 volunteers and 1 guest and the first 6 volunteers said, hey, good morning, welcome to church. Hey, good morning, welcome to church. Maybe you don't need to be number 7 that does that, right? You're not a gauntlet. You can just you can use your good common sense about that. All right, one more, and then we're going to take a lunch break. First time guest kiosk. First time guest kiosk. Now I say kiosk because you might have a first time guest table. You might have a welcome center. You might have a little corner of the lobby or whatever. I would encourage you to think about a first-time guest tent on the outside of your building. And here's the reason why. Because if you place something on the outside of your building, so for us we have a 10 by 10 tent that on all 4 sides it says First Time at Summit Stop Here. Very, very clear. That's where you're supposed to go. When we park first-time guests who have turned on their hazard lights, we park them right beside that tent, so they got to walk by it. We put it obnoxiously in the way of the front door of the building, so you've got to basically walk around it in order to get into the building. It's very, very clear that that's where you're supposed to go. The reason that we do that is because it is a neutral space for a guest to stop before they have to go into a building that is unfamiliar. So they've gotten out of their car, they kind of see the tent, and they're like, okay, they're thinking about it as they go, and we've got people that are trained to watch for them and know who's new and make eye contact and get them over there or whatever. It is incredibly important that you have a place that your guests can make themselves known. And we just happen to choose a tent on the outside of the building. Now, here's what we do at the tent. At the tent, we get a little bit of information. So we want to be able to follow up with you. So we're going to get name, email, phone number, whatever. If you've got kids, we want to get some information on your kids so we know what their allergies are. We've got your emergency contact number in case they have a situation in kids that we need to come and find you for. All of these different things. But we want to make sure that we are giving our guests an opportunity to engage out there. Now, a couple of things that you need to know about this. I prefer, I don't always win this argument, but I prefer that it be only women who serve at the tent. Because men, let's just be honest with ourselves, we're not usually great at that kind of stuff, all right? I'm in charge of the whole process. You don't want me serving at the first-time guest tent because this is what I will do. I will stand there at the tent in my normal posture with my arms crossed and my legs, my feet about 2 feet apart, and somebody will come out and go, hey, good morning. What's your name? Mm-hmm. What do you do? Mm-hmm. Get inside, right? That's basically me, and that's the way a lot of you guys are, right? But ladies are typically warmer, more approachable. We put our best and brightest, right, at the tent because we want them to be able, we know that that's going to be the place where a guest is going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes worth of interaction, and we know that conversation can go so far south so fast if we're not very careful in the way that we do this. We also want the tent outside. Now, let me address that. We're all in basically the same climate area, right? I recognize in North Carolina we're not prone to major extremes on either end, right? When it's really, really cold around here, that maybe lasts a few days. When it's really, really hot, it might last a few weeks, but usually with a good fan or a good space heater or something like that, we're okay. We face wind, don't we? We face the hurricane force winds, and so we like anchor down our tents or put sandbags around the legs or whatever. But the reason that we always want that tent out there again is because it serves as a draw. And I'll tell you what one fail-safe argument that I learned a few years ago. I was doing a training for a church up in Rochester, Minnesota. It was about this time of year, maybe a little bit later in November, and this southern-born and raised Tennessee boy was not okay. It was cold. I was so cold. I could not get warm. I did not bring enough layers. I stood up in front of those people and I was like, I'm so glad that you live here, and I'm so glad that I'm going home tomorrow. Like, I can't do this anymore. And at the end of our time together, we were doing some Q&A, and one of them said, okay, so give us some real practical, what would you recommend? I said, well, my normal would be, I would recommend to you, get a first-time guest tent, put it outside. But, you're in Rochester, Minnesota. I'm not going to tell you to do that. Well, it made them mad because they took it as a personal challenge. And so they bought a tent, and they put it outside. And about 2 years later, I got a text from the pastor who had invited me up there. He said, hey, you'll love this story. He said, this weekend, for the very first time in 2 years, we did not put a tent up outside because the wind chill was 27 degrees below zero. And he said, and when I told my volunteers they were not allowed to put the tent up outside, I thought they were going to revolt against me. And they said, we're Minnesotans. We can handle it. And he said, you'll die, and you're not allowed to handle it. And he said, and they're still mad at me. He said, but I thought you'd want to know that. I said, I absolutely want to know that, because I got a bunch of North Carolinians that whenever it gets to 57 degrees, are like, it's too cold. If they can do it at 27 below, you're going to be okay at 57, all right? But it's important to have it out there. All right.